Hi, my name is Ryan. I am a park interpreter here at Garden of the Gods. Thank you for joining me here at the Garden of the Gods Visitor and Nature Center. Today, we're going to be covering applied ecology at Garden of the Gods. Now, let's dive right into it. First of all, Garden of the Gods has a lot of varying conditions. We are 6,500 feet above sea level, making it hot and dry, but we're also nestled against the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, bringing more precipitation down upon us than those areas further away from the mountains. These various conditions allow a lot of different ecosystems to thrive here, including prairie grassland from the east, wetlands which thrive around our creek, mountain shrublands which come to us from the mountains, pinyon and juniper woodlands, which come to us from the southwest United States, and montane forest, which comes to us again from the mountains. Finally, we have cliff islands, which are provided to us from our impressive rock formations. Now, all these different ecosystems bring together in one place all of these different species, which call these different ecosystems home. This increases what we call in ecology biodiversity. Biodiversity is a big word, but let's just break it down. Bio means life, and diversity is how many different things are in one place together. So biodiversity is considering how many different species there are living in one place. And at Garden of the Gods, because of all of our different ecosystems, we have a high biodiversity. But why is biodiversity important? Every single species provides a different ecosystem service. Now let's break that down. Different species perform different jobs within their ecosystem. We call this an ecosystem niche, whether this be bees pollinating plants or squirrels for getting nuts that they planted and a tree grows because of it. We call these ecosystem services because these are services that a species provides knowingly or unknowingly to other different species, which helps them thrive. But ecosystem services are very important to humans. They provide various different types of services. First and foremost, that impacts our lives the most are provisioning services. These provide us with provisions, such as food from our agriculture or fibers to create clothes. There's also regulating services, such as cleaning our air and our water. There's also cultural services, which could be a religious importance or recreation. Unfortunately, humans do a lot of different things that decrease biodiversity. It could be decreased by deforestation, simply taking up land, desertification, which is the decrease of water, and overexploitation through very unregulated hunting. Fortunately, we do have a lot of different strategies that we use to combat the negative impacts that humans have on biodiversity, and we call these conservation strategies. Conservation strategies are broken down into two main components, that is ex situ conservation and in situ conservation. Ex situ conservation is where we take a species out of its natural environment in order to protect it. Examples of these include zoos or seed banks. In zoos, endangered species are taken out of their environment where they are threatened and encouraging them to mate more so we get more of those species, therefore combating extinction. We also have in situ conservation, which you may have guessed is protecting species in their natural environment, and that is what we prefer to do. In situ conservation strategies vary widely. They could be a land designation, such as we have, or a city park here. There's also more strict conservation designations, such as a biosphere reserve, where portions of it are totally off limits to human entrance. Other things that we do are designate specific species to protect, and these could be flagship species, such as the panda from World Wildlife Fund. This is a flagship species that they use. It is cute to the whole population, and they make it their emblem to attract attention. There are also different types of designations, such as indicator species, Birds are a good indicator species. If bird populations decline, we know that there is a big problem within the ecosystem. Now, there are also ways that we decrease biodiversity, and it's not just through destruction, it could be through introduction as well. An example of this is the introduction of non-native invasive species. Now, one thing does need to be clarified here, and that is the difference between a non-native species and a non-native invasive species. A non-native species is one that is not indigenous to an environment, but is not causing harm to the other species in that environment. As you may have guessed, a non-native invasive species does cause harm to other species of the environment, and a good example of this in Colorado is mullein, which just devastates other species of flora around it. There are different ways to control non-native invasive species. These could be through physical control, where we pull a plant out of the ground. A lot of the times, though, they are invasive because they are hard to control, and this may create a necessity to use chemical control, where we inject certain plants with chemicals. A plant that definitely needs chemical treatment would be like Japanese knotweed. There's also biological control. It's called classical biological control, and that's where you introduce another species that hunts that non-native invasive species. However, there is a risk that the new species that is introduced also becomes a non-native invasive species. Now, that was a lot of information. We covered applied ecology, just a brief introduction. As a quick overview, we covered the different ecosystems of Garden of the Gods, which are here due to our varying conditions, where those ecosystems come from. We also covered how these ecosystems bring a lot of different species to Garden of the Gods and contribute to a high biodiversity. Humans thrive off of a high biodiversity because of all the different jobs that these species provide, called ecosystem niches, which in turn provide us ecosystem services, which we could not survive without. We also went into the ways that we conserve biodiversity through ex situ and in situ conservation, and we also did a brief overview of non-native invasive species and how they are controlled. Thank you for joining me at Garden of the Gods. Have a great day.